How you doing, boys and girls? Happy Monday morning to you all. I hope everyone's doing well. Late parts of August arriving. So last week we went over the two most confusing parts of the water cycle, and I am going to go over those this week as well. Again, because you have got to make sure they are ingrained in your memory, because we're going to have a test this week, and I'll talk more about it later. So we talked about evaporation, which obviously starts with the sun. The sun makes the wind. The sun and the wind are the two things that can cause evaporation to begin on Earth. We've got to have evaporation. And the reason we do is because when it rains, the rain falls to the earth, and if we didn't have evaporation, it would be mud everywhere, right? Everything would be wet. So we got to have some sort of evaporation. We've also got to have condensation, because without condensation, we would never have any rain. And if we didn't have any rain, our plants wouldn't grow, we wouldn't have any water, and thus we would dehydrate and die. So both are vital. Now today, the next step we're going to talk about is something called precipitation. Now if you watch the weather a lot at home, they generally categorize water that falls to earth as precipitation. Hey, we're going to have some wet precipitation. Okay, we're going to have some frozen precipitation. And that basically means that it is water coming out of the clouds in one form or another. Now, this is a pretty easy one, and so is runoff. So we're going to tackle both of these today in a short video. Now, the first thing it says is when cloud particles become too heavy to remain suspended in the air, they fall to the earth as precipitation. Precipitation occurs in a variety of forms: hail, rain, freezing rain, sleet, or snow. Okay? You can categorize precipitation as anything that falls to earth that is water or will convert into water. Now, I kind of made this saying up myself. And basically I tell all you guys every year that, if an airplane part falls off of the plane and it falls to earth, it's not going to convert itself into water. It's going to be plane wreckage, right? So the reason I did do that is because when snow and sleet and freezing rain fall, even though some of them fall in the form of in a frozen way, even hail, stuff eventually melts. Not unless it's on top of a really high mountain. It could stay there forever. So let's talk about some of these, and we're not going to talk about rain because you guys know what rain looks like. You see rain all the time, and I would assume that most of you guys have watched TV enough to know what snow is. But we're going to talk about the other three, because the other three are ones you might not be so aware of, okay? So, this right here is a very, very close up view of something we call sleet, okay? Now, sleet are small little frozen balls of precipitation, and these are just frozen raindrops, okay? You might have heard sleet before. I can't remember if you guys are old enough to remember the last snowstorm or not, but the last snowstorm we had, there was a significant snowstorm. We had a lot of sleet. You can hear it falling. These are like really small little BBs of frozen precipitation. Here's some more, and it looks very similar to hail, but it's very, very much smaller than hail is. These are really, really small little balls of ice, and these are just BBs you put into a BB gun, but this is what sleet basically looks like. They're not all the same size, obviously, but really small little raindrops that are frozen, that fall to the earth, and they are frozen precipitation. Yeah, they can be dangerous. They're not the most dangerous one at all. Snow's not very dangerous if you know how to drive in it. So these guys right here, they might ask you this on the test at the end of the year, what is sleet? Well, sleet is small frozen pieces of rain. And it all depends on the temperature of the atmosphere. Obviously, this stuff is not going to fall in the summer because it is a winter precipitation, okay? Sleet is. Now, the next one, that's sleet as well, but it did not turn out well. Now, this right here, I don't know how well you can see it. The picture doesn't look really well when I blew it up, but This is a sign with icicles hanging down. And this right here is the frozen precipitation, freezing rain. Now, out of all the precipitations, this is probably one of the most dangerous ones. And the reason it is because it falls as liquid rain, but everything on the surface of the earth is super cold. So when these raindrops that come from the sky hit something on the earth, like let's say your car or this sign, they freeze on impact. So they cause a coating of ice on everything. And if it's freezing rain outside, you should not drive, ever. This is a good indication of freezing rain right here. If you see a branch with ice basically encasing the entire thing, then you know that freezing rain has fallen in your area. Sleet would not be able to do something like this to the branches. Sleet would just fall right off those branches and fall straight to the ground. It would not coat the branches of your tree. But something like freezing rain does. Now, if it does this to the branches of a tree, what do you think it's doing to the road that's very, very cold? Well, it's putting a thin layer of ice on the road as well. So it's always a good idea not to drive in freezing rain. This is one we get a lot around here because we have like a warm atmosphere around here, but sometimes it gets cold. And when you have warm and cold, the way we do, a lot of freezing rain falls. This is really dangerous stuff. Now, the next one we're going to talk about, and this looks very similar to sleet, but this is hail. Now, hail is an anomaly because hail is frozen, but hail only falls out of massive thunderstorms in the summertime. And these are various sizes of hail. Some of them, you got pea-sized hail, and then this is about the size of a nickel. That's about the size of a dime. So this is generally kind of a mixed bag. Hail is made in these massive thunderstorms, and I'm going to have to teach you how it's made because that is one of the questions on the test that I've seen. I'll show you some other examples of hail. So these are really big hailstones, and as you can see, this gentleman's hands or this young lady's hands, I'm not sure. These hailstones are probably right around the size of a baseball. And these can cause massive, massive damage to your house, your car. Look at what it did. Oh, well, let me talk about this first. Hail, you can tell it's kind of like a tree, okay? Because hailstones have to be made in the thunderstorm. So you can tell there's the beginning of the ice, and then here's another little ring around it, and another ring around it, and another ring around it. And that means that hailstone has gone up and down in that thunderstorm 4 times. And I know you guys don't understand what that means, but I'm going to go over hail tomorrow because you got to know how it works. But basically, you can tell how long hail's been alive. This is just kind of like a tree. Let me show you. So if I counted, this is a tree that's been cut down. If you count all these lines, that's how many years the tree has been alive. If you look at this hailstone, that's how many times the hailstone has gone back up into the cloud and refrozen itself. We get some hail around here. Generally, it's called pea hail. Looks like little small green peas, but it's ice. Sometimes we get nickel-sized hail. That's generally as big as we get. We don't get big, gigantic hailstones like the ones I showed you a minute ago. Let's keep going. Now, this is some of the damage that hail can do. This plane right here, you can see its nose is totally caved in. The windshields are smashed. This plane went through a hailstorm, and probably not on purpose. It was probably an accident because obviously something like that could crash the plane because all their navigational devices are in the nose of the plane. So very, very scary time, I'm sure, for people like that. Check out what it did to this car. You see those little divots all over that car? That's from hail hitting the car. So hail causes a lot of damage, okay? So once all this precipitation hits, it's got to go somewhere. There's some giant hailstones right there. It's got to go somewhere, okay? And we call that a runoff, okay? So once this precipitation falls, it's got to go somewhere. It just can't sit in your backyard, okay? It can soak into the ground, but generally it runs places. It runs into lakes, rivers, streams, and all the big rivers in the United States and all over the world eventually all lead to the ocean. So basically all this water goes back into the ocean for the most part. So here's some runoff right here. Nothing really major. You know, sometimes massive runoff can cause problems. Here's a little bit of runoff off of a field. The water's going with gravity. Water's getting pulled down by gravity, so water's going to go to the path of least resistance, and it's going to go down as far as it can until it can sit there to become evaporated again. You know, and sometimes it's going to go underground and never be seen again. This right here is called excessive runoff. So when you have too much precipitation, we can have a flood. And you guys that went through Florence, you know this very well. This is not something you want. This is too much precipitation falling at one time, and the water can't run off fast enough, and there's just too much of it, and it stays around. And some of you guys might have had your houses flooded. It's not a very comfortable thing. You got to tear your whole house up because of mold. And here's another picture. This is excessive runoff as well. So you can see these people walking through this runoff. It doesn't look like that water's going anywhere for a while. So even though we need precipitation, too much of it falling at one time can lead to problems like this. And even precipitation can lead to problems, man. Think about it when it snows. You can't really go out and drive in it. I mean, it's easier to drive in than freezing rain, but nobody wants to go drive in snow. You might get into an accident. You got hailstones that can hit your car and cause massive damage, hit you in the head, and possibly inflict serious damage. So these two right here are easy to understand, way easier than evaporation and condensation, okay? So I'm gonna give you 7 questions today, all right? And just do the best you can. A couple of them are gonna be from last week. So hopefully you're gonna remember all the stuff I talked to you about last week, okay? But I will talk to you tomorrow. We're gonna go over groundwater and transpiration tomorrow, and we'll be wrapping up the water cycle this week. It always takes us about 2 weeks to do the water cycle. So we're pretty much right on schedule for where we need to be, all right? So make sure you answer the questions. If you got any questions, just please inquire to me, and I will walk you through everything. And I hope you guys have a good day.